Hey, welcome to the program, Mark.
Happy to be here.
Interesting. Your last name is Muncy.
Yep,
Now we have a town here in Indiana called Muncy, and it's got
it
some.
is.
It's got some. Really only claim to fame is the cemeteries. A lot of dead. A lot of dead people over there, and I think anytime you got a bunch of dead people in a group, then some weird stuff can happen.
They got to learn to spell their town right. They spell it wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we got to look into that, man. So, yeah, it is IE. So,
Yep.
would you look
I don't
that
know
up?
what's wrong with those people.
Did you look that up? Okay, but I've had my own cemetery experiences, and man, by the judgment, looking at your books, Erie, Florida, and Erie, Appalachian, I want to kind of key on the Appalachians because, man,
Yeah.
when I think of Florida, and I guess there's monsters down there, there's monsters everywhere. I think of swamp things and things like that. I think of Adrienne Barbeau, down there in Florida somewhere. And why is it she's in every swamp movie? I don't know. Hey, she's in
Oh
it.
yeah,
Hey, she's
nothing
in.
wrong with that.
She's in a new movie on Prime. It's called Big Legend.
Hmm.
And it's a great show, man, and it's about it's about the big guy out in the forest.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now
And she's got a big following amongst us cryptid fans. So
yeah,
that goes way back.
you started to say big, and I didn't know how to fill the end of that sentence out. All right, so what did I say? What did I say? Hey, okay. Anyway, so hey, listen to this. So this is your bio on our website, man. Strange lights darting through the pitch black sky, horrible occurrences in their bizarre tragedy, tall tales, humanoid eyes, apparitions, and what do you do to when these mysteries confront you? Now, this is a key thing, Mark. I want to know: do or have people been confronted with these mysteries? Or are they always kind of off to the side and they really never get confronted?
No, I get emails quite a bit. Since I've got the three Florida books out, I'm like the go-to guy for when somebody sees something unusual or strange in Florida that isn't just a Florida man doing something stupid. Yeah, they call me or they email me because my email is like the worst kept secret on the internet. So they message me and say, "Hey Mark, I saw this weird thing on I-10 or I-95 or out in the Green Swamp or down in the Everglades and so my job, since I'm a what they I like to call a paranormal journalist, I'm not a Bigfoot hunter, I am not a ghost hunter, I am not a UFO expert, but I go with Bigfoot hunters, UFO hunters, and stuff and ghost hunters, and so I collect their stories. So my job is when these people send me these emails is, hey, this is who you should talk to, this is who you should report it to, and that way it gets out there to the right people who can actually document it and that way we've got maybe somebody else
Mhm.
saw it a week ago or a few weeks ago or a month ago in the same area, or it might tie into some ancient lore, and that's where I come in. I dig into the folklore and the history behind these things, look for old newspaper articles, and there you saw a ghost here, guess what, somebody saw a ghost here in 1920. It's the last time it was reported, but it was reported. So that's the sort of thing I like to come up with.
Um, Somebody pointed out that you apparently have a dragon on your shirt, Mark. Could you please explain that?
Oh, yeah, no, I was actually at an event at a role playing store today, and so I had my Dungeons and Dragons shirt on. So
Uh huh.
when you write spooky books about Florida, you get a lot of Hawaiian prints,
Uh huh.
and so this is my Dungeons and Dragons
Oh,
Hawaiian print.
okay.
So
So role playing. What role did you play?
I was the dungeon master. I was a game master for a game that was it was a spooky game because I'm the spooky guy. So I was taking them on an adventure in Dungeons and Dragons, but I had them fight a skunk ape. So,
Mm.
there we go. So the Florida
Hmm.
Bigfoot, because we
Hmm.
can't have nice things in Florida. We have to rename everything stupid. So skunk ape is what our Bigfoot is.
Uh-huh. Well, you're actually talking to a Bigfoot hunter myself.
Yeah.
I've been out
Yeah.
there. In fact, I think last week I played a video. Had a rock thrown at me. First, we were deep in the woods. We heard a howl, and it was in land between the lakes, and we heard a howl, and we wouldn't particularly actually wasn't looking for Bigfoot. Was just looking to take a hike. And but this monkey howl got us looking around, and then so I did the old um, I did my own yell, and then I did the tree knock with a log, and then a rock comes flying through the forest, and we were the only ones in the forest. Nearly hit me. And
Nice.
and that's a thing right there, Mark, because we can do tongue-in-cheek things about monsters and things in the woods,
Yep.
but the fact of the matter is, there's enough evidence to say that it's really kind of beyond the Comic Con
Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
imagery. There's some real stuff going on, and but here's a question though. You may not be able to answer. I don't. Now that I think about it, I've never asked anybody. Why is it in the rock throwing, which there are lots of, and I've been in the forest and seen rock stacks appear out of nowhere. As a matter of fact, why can't they hit their target when they're throwing rocks? They don't really hit people. They just are they that good to where they can say, well, I'm not going to hit you. I'm going to let you know we're here and don't like you.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think it is exactly that they are that good that they're like, hey, run away. You don't want any part of this. We're chasing you off. It's just like, what do we do when we see a bear coming at you? You don't, and you don't have a gun. You scare it away. You try to get it to go away so you can get away. And that's exactly what I think these things are doing is they're trying to, what's the old saying? They're as afraid of you as you are of them. I don't think that's the case. But I also think they don't want to mess with you. They don't know they know we've got loud boomsticks, and they don't want to deal with those. So, let's go away. This is our territory. And that, that howl might have been, some sort of aggressive, or it could be, something else. We don't understand these things. That's what this is all about is, these things need more study. They need more, things known. I mean, we know about as much as we did when the Patterson-Gimlin tape came out, in 1960s. These things have been, we've got news reports that go back to the 1800s and prior. And we've got Native Americans talking about these things. And we've given them very little study because if you start talking about it, people go, oh, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and we don't want to talk about it. And this is I like a lot of people like to call it, preternatural stuff we don't understand yet. That someday we will. I mean, a few years ago, we didn't understand, dark matter in the sky, and now we're starting to get the hang of it. And we used to talk about parallel universes as being this crazy thing, and now some scientists are going, that might be a real thing. And we're and with all the UAPs and UFOs now coming out from the government, the stuff that was goofy 20 years ago is now, oh wait, we're studying this. We need to give it more stuff. You even look at chiropractic medicine, up until recently, medical schools, that's voodoo. We don't talk about chiropractic medicine, but now we realize people are getting help from it. So it is, the preternatural one generation becomes the natural the next. And that's what this is. This is just stuff that needs some serious study. And sadly, you start talking about it, they don't put the money there. There's no, unless it's going to get your ratings on Travel Channel, they don't talk about it. So.
Well, I think we finally got past the swamp gas description of anybody that sees a UFO. And now we are talking about the Appalachians. That's going to bring to my first, and I don't know if it's contained in your book, but there's something known as the Brown Mountain Lights.
Yes.
And there's an actual movie back to Amazon Prime, where I spend my time at. It's called the Alien Abduction, which is basically a movie based on the Brown Mountain Lights, and you talk about you mentioned the creatures. We could use Bigfoot, but I think there's a whole lot more creatures that we need to discuss. Kind of wants you to go away. But speaking of going away, if you're following any of Dave Paulides, Missing 411, you know that it ain't the Bigfoot that's going away. It's the people that's going away. So the fact of the matter is, if they may make you go away. And while I'm in this kind of train of thought, reminded me a Star Trek episode when they got this young kid and he go, and then you go away. Do you remember that?
I think it was a Twilight Zone. Yeah, send them to the cornfield.
It was on Starship.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. They did that in Trek too.
I forget the name of it, but of that one. But he would, and then I think Kirk said, Charlie, stop making people go away. Can you bring them back? So, so we don't want them making us go away. I think, and I don't know, I'm not sure for sure if I want them to go away because it's kind of intriguing. I like a good mystery. I guess I like a mystery until we get up to the active confrontation of said said cryptid.
Well, for years, it's not part of the Appalachians, but right on the base of the Appalachians is, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's right there in the heart in Ohio. And it has where, more people talk about Area 51 because it was, classified, but I think they hit a lot of this stuff right in broad daylight. And Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, well-known Air Force Base, did a lot of crazy testing and still has a lot of classified projects that we're not allowed to know about. So I think that, I think there's a lot of stuff that was taken there over the years. We talk about the Flatwoods monster. We talk about, Mothman. We talk about all these unusual things. They all happened in the shadow of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And then, we've got a dark sky area over most of West Virginia that, where the Greenfield Observatory is. And that's where a lot of UFO sightings are seen. Brown Mountain Lights, right there, right next to Seneca Rocks. All these amazing places. And guess what? It's all right along that parallel. And which is why, a lot of UFO experts, a lot of alien experts, they talk about that area as just a flap, a hot spot. Mm-hmm. And, when you start researching it like we did, we came on it sideways. We were researching a Florida story that suddenly had a tie to Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And so when I was pitching it to my publisher and said, hey, I've got my next Florida book's going to have 3 chapters, one on Ohio, one on Kentucky, and one on West Virginia. They're like, well, why don't you do that book and just do 1 chapter on Florida? And I'm like, good call. So that's, but one of them was a tie to a 1952 UFO encounter down here in Miami called the Crestview sighting, where a bunch of kids in a school see basically a bunch of UFOs, and kids, teachers, hundreds of witnesses. And the next day, government comes to interrogate everybody, and one kid says, oh, they kind of look like helicopters. So the next day in the newspapers, oh, strange craft, we're just helicopters from nearby base. And it's forgotten about until social media, modern day, and, now the Navy's releasing some of this footage. Some of these kids who are now in their 70s and 80s are going, wait a minute, that's what we saw. We didn't see helicopters. We saw this weird stuff, and now we can talk about it and not get laughed at. So, of course, what do? They emailed the crazy Florida guy. And so I start getting these emails, and I start talking to these people. I'm like excited. It's going to be my next book. But then suddenly one of them had a list of names of these people that had interviewed him. His father had written down in his little journal / address book / diary thing. And the names, I was like, I was excited because these are government names. I can do Freedom of Information Act and find these guys. And one of them was a Captain Sinclair of the Coast Guard. So that one I kind of got some hits with. Another one was a Captain Smith from the Air Force. That really didn't help much. Mm-hmm. But then the last one was Government Man Cold. And suddenly my brain flashed to Indrid Cold, and who was a strange encounter of an oddball man in black / maybe alien that happened in 1952. And then I'm doing the math in my head. Crestview sighting was 1952. This was 6 months after that incident in West Virginia. So suddenly I had to do a chapter on Indrid Cold, and I start looking into that, and then it ties into other things. And so is Indrid Cold the first man in black? Is he working for the government suddenly 6 months later? I knew I had something hot, and then that's where this book came from.
Wow. Okay. All right. We've got a question from Doug in Virginia. It says, have you heard of the Bunny Man from Fairfax County, Virginia?
There is an excellent illustration. My lovely wife's the illustrator. She brings all these to life. There's an excellent illustration of the Bunny Man story from Fairfax, right on the Pennsylvania-West Virginia border. And the Bunny Man Bridge, we went. We learned that there is some real history behind this guy in a bunny costume with an axe that attacked people. We also found that there was another story of an escaped lunatic nearby in the same area that kind of tied in, and these two stories kind of morph into one. And we find that a lot with these stories, where if something weird happens and something else weird happens nearby, they kind of become one story. So yeah, Bunny Man, we've got some details of him in the book. I think you'll enjoy it. So
speaking of Bunny Man, it reminds me of a movie. I think it was called Cabin Fever. And it's where these four people go into this cabin, and they're being haunted. The water's contaminated. But when they first arrive at a gas station, there's this little kid sitting there on a bench, and he's got a bunny face. And man, that thing was that had just as much effect as the mask, the hockey mask guy.
Yep. Yeah, that's it's all about when the head is not human, when there's something unusual about it, it triggers things in us. And that's something inside us that is primeval. It's been there for forever. So that means there's an evolutionary reason for us to be afraid of things with weird heads. So that's why some of these monsters, some of these cryptids stand out to me. I love the holler monsters. That was the thing that really drew me to this book. Was we went up for the we had to do Indrid Cold, we had to do the Mothman, which meant we had to do the Flatwoods monster, which meant we had to do the Grafton monster. But then I started learning that every holler has a story, and since I'm from up there originally, I knew my little holler monster, and I was able to share that with the world through this book that was on my family farm. But then I realized every farm, every holler had something like that. And so I was able to interview dozens and dozens of families and get dozens and dozens of crazy stories. And most of them had never left the family, area. So that was one of the things I loved most about this book. And I can't wait, to share more.
Mm-hmm.
So
speaking of similar stories, I went to a graveyard one night, and in the middle of the night, I heard afar off some screams coming from a bridge, and I was there with my sons, and I thought, well, they got to be hearing this, but evidently they didn't. I guess I was the only one who heard that. And so later I went and kind of researched this. Why was I, at first I thought somebody was beating their kid in the middle of the night. Like, man, in this area here, people really have some discipline problems or something. And then I went and found out there's bridge has a story of a car careening off, and there's a kid that gets drowned. And so I went to research it, and it seemed like the scream at the bridge is a common theme in a lot of communities. So what is that? Is it because it's an instant nightmarish death that causes the residual appearances of these entities?
And that goes back to what they like to call like stone tape theory, which is something Nigel Keel promoted, which was basically there's a certain type of haunting, a certain type of residual energy is when somebody meets a tragic end or a sudden end, and it's imprinted on the building around them, and bridges, rivers, because they have that strange electromagnetic, combination of water and stone. And so when that happens, it gets this, they imprint, and then it's there. And those are the recording ones, the ghosts that seem to just repeat ad infinitum. Sometimes they're imprinted on an object, sometimes they're imprinted on a thing. And
like a doll.
The fact that, like a doll, like Robert the Doll or something like that down here in Key West. But they sometimes, some people can see them, some people can't. It's my wife is like a ghost lodestone. We go to some of the most haunted locations on the planet, and me and a couple others will see something unusual or hear something unusual, and she'll be over in the cemetery taking a picture of a butterfly on a tombstone and have no idea that anything's happened. Mm-hmm. And so that's, to me, it's like, so why do some people see it? Why do some people not? And that's one of those things we've got to figure out with these things. Again, preternatural. We haven't studied it enough. We don't know why this works. Mm-hmm. But then why do some ghosts talk to us? Why do they interact with us? Why are some more poltergeist-like and just, active? Mm-hmm. And then, then there's those negative entities that seem to be very, scary. Like there's the Bellamy Bridge. That's a bridge down here in Florida that is so haunted. It's a state park, and they have the ghost on their state park sign telling the ghost story. How many state parks tell their ghost stories? Not many. This one does. And again, so what caused it? Why is it there? Who knows? And that's, we go into these histories of these, like this one, we were able to debunk the history behind it, of this flaming bridal ghost that supposedly died there. Mm-hmm. But we found out that was actually a story from South Carolina. So how is it here in Florida? And it was just because the name was the same of the family, but the ghost is still seen there, but the ghost must be something else. So that's part of our books, is figuring out, okay, well then what is it? It's not this story. This was just a book from South Carolina that, made good press and used the same last name, but people still see something similar obviously they're not seeing the same thing. So now we got to figure that out. And that's what our books do, is we delve in and try to figure these things out.
All right, we have another question. This is from Rose. Why are the Appalachians so haunted? Do you know of any spooky creatures around the Appalachians in New York?
In New York, one of the fun ones that we got to talk about was there was a family that, this is in upstate New York, that they had inherited some land, and this was like old, 1700s family settlement, and they didn't really know much about, even like maybe late 1600s, and they were surveying their land, and they came across a barn that wasn't on their survey. And this is like early 1900s, and so this family's land's been there a couple hundred years, and no one's gotten this far back, and so they start trying to dig into that barn to see what's in, and they notice a lot of dead animals nearby. And they get a little closer, and there's spider webs everywhere, and they open the barn and they see what they said were spiders the size of cats and dogs.
Wow.
And yeah, big, nothing that big in North America that we know of. I mean, so some get that big, but so what did they do? They did the smart thing. They burned it to the ground. They just stood outside, burned that to the ground. So we don't want anything to do with this. And what did they find underneath? A mine entrance into the cave systems and mines down here under the Appalachians. We've got Mammoth Cave system that we still don't know how big it is. And they go into that and find bigger webs, and they don't even want to know what that is. So again, more fire. That's the answer to everything in those days. And now what's fun about that story is I had several families tell me this story in this area. And every one of them talks about how they keep their barns pristine in this area now so that critters don't move in. And but why are the Appalachians so haunted, and why are they are the oldest mountain range in the world? We think of the Alps, we think of the Himalayas, they're huge and ginormous, and that's because they're young. They're baby mountain ranges. The Appalachians are the oldest. They've been here longer than any other mountain range, so they are old. They are weathered. That's why they are more accessible. But they also are one of the largest in the world. If you look at it historically, the Scottish Highlands, the Irish Hills, those are the Appalachians. It was all one mountain range before Pangea broke, and we all split apart and went our own ways because everybody's trying to get away from Florida. So, they push it away, get rid of that place.
Whoa, hold, rewind. Aren't people going to Florida?
That's, now, I don't know why. It's, we have 9 months of August. Everything here is trying to kill you. We have the mosquitoes here, you put off on. That's actually a turn on for our mosquitoes. They love off. You've got our, alligators. We've got herpes monkeys in the woods that will give you death.
Wow, herpes monkeys.
They descended from Tarzan's monkeys from the TV show. They filmed it down here in Florida. They left them in the woods thinking that they would just die out, but they got loose and they were a breeding pair. So now we have rampaging monkeys in the Ocala National Forest, where a lot of Bigfoot sightings occur.
Well, that's nasty, but also does that mean you guys got a bunch of monkeypox down there?
That's what we're worried about. These things are worse. They have a herpes that's deadly to humans. So if they bite you, you can die. So one of the many more ways Florida wants to kill you. We also have the deadliest snakes in America. Everything from water moccasins and and rattlesnakes to the coral snake, which will kill you dead very quickly.
Well, I can't stand monkeys anyway, man, because they got them gnarly teeth, and I see people hold them monkeys, and it's like, man, they're gonna turn on you, they're gonna bite you. I can't deal.
Super aggressive. These ones that are in the Ocala National Park,
super aggressive monkeys.
And what's fun was they'll also they know where deer feeders are for hunters, and they figured out how to trigger them because they're smart. So they start stealing all the corn, they start stealing all the things, and so these are smart, aggressive monkeys that will kill you. So, while you're hunting Bigfoot, you got more things to watch out for.
Well, everybody knows, and you talk about the residual attachment to objects, and that reminds me of it seemed like dolls are always one of the things. But another one is, to me, is nutcrackers. Because, Mark, I'm telling you, at nighttime, I think those things walk around. If you got them in your house, I think they walk around.
Yeah, any of those like those and of course ventriloquist dummies seem to be a common because everybody imprints on them. When they're giving them a name. It goes to me back to like fae and fairy folklore because you're giving these things names, you're giving them personalities. And that's one of the things they love to take names and that's why Robert the Doll down in Key West, he took his owner's name. His owner was named Robert, and he decided, you're Robert, and I'm going to go by Gene, wow. I'll use my middle name so that you can have my name. How crazy is that? Of course, we have a haunted doll because of that. So, and that's so these imprints, that's why I guess children imprint on these things more because they're giving them their all. They are their imaginary friend. These are, is it so imaginary? Who knows?
Yeah, I think. There's another famous haunted doll, and I'll put her up on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Tina.
My name is Tina. I don't like you. So, I mean, that's a spooky doll right there. That guy tried to use a power saw, man. He tried to throw it in a dumpster. This thing kept coming back. I mean, these things don't want to die, Mark, and that's the problem. But hey, this might be right up your alley here. Grumpy Old Army Vet says, Mark, do you have any knowledge of the Jersey Devil?
Yes, that's another one. My lovely wife got to do a fun illustration for this one because we had to put Jersey Devil in here because he's basically a holler monster that became, got loose and is now world famous. That's how these things work. It was there's different stories. Mother Leeds is the name most associated with it, and she had 13 children, and after her 12th one, she said when the 13th one came out, she damned it. She's like, I don't want any more kids. This one could just be the devil. And guess what? It come out with horns and a horse head with hooves and bat wings, and it literally like yeeted out the cemetery, yeeted out the chimney. It just flew away, right after it was born. And so now up in the Pine Barrens area of New Jersey, which is deep woods and part of the Appalachians. Right. It's one of those, if your animals start dying or something goes wrong, Jersey Devil did it.
Yeah.
Your milk cart's turning sour, Jersey Devil.
Right.
You can't, have a bad crop. Oh, Jersey Devil must have got to it. It's, and that's what these monsters all are is, they're scapegoats. They're things to, this weird thing happened. So obviously it has something to do with the monster in the holler. We didn't, feed it properly. We didn't treat it right. The thing is with Jersey Devil, it was so famous that, there was hunts for it for years, like professional hunts. The Smithsonian offered a bounty if you could catch it, that's still out there. So if you call the Smithsonian Institute, if you happen to catch the Jersey Devil, they owe you $100,000. So, might be worth a hunt.
Now, how close are we to the Mothman over there at Point Pleasant?
Now that's the festival's next week. And I'll be speaking at the Mothman Festival for the first time. I'm excited about that, a week from today. But that's not that far when you think about it. It's maybe a few hours drive from Jersey, so they could be buddies.
Right.
But Mothman, 1960s was its first sightings. 5 grave diggers see this flying humanoid nearby, not too far from Point Pleasant.
Interesting.
But then
you go ahead.
No, go ahead. But it's seen a little while later in Point Pleasant, in the TNT area, which is an old abandoned military place where they built munitions for World War II. And these guys are out there. It's a nice place to drive around and make out with your friends. And these 2 couples are out there, and they see this thing. It starts attacking them. Now, the weird thing about Mothman is, some people think it's a big bird. It's a sandhill crane. It's all this other stuff. But it's got these weird, all of the descriptions. If you go back to the original sightings and you go back to the original stories, the way it flies, it never flaps its wings. It flies like a jet, engine. It takes off at super speeds. It never seems to move the wings on its back, and it's got these glowing red eyes when lights hit it, like eye shine.
Right.
But people still see the glow when the lights aren't there. So, and then it's almost like half in spirit in some of the descriptions where it's blurry and not really there. It's similar to some modern Bigfoot sightings where it's kind of like you're missing 411 guy, where it's kind of cloaking, why it's kind of, blending in with the backgrounds.
So do you think
it's super muscular?
Do you think that according to legend that an Indian put a curse on that bridge that collapsed there?
Cornstalk. Chief Cornstalk is all over the legends of the Ohio Valley and the Miami River because he got treated bad. He was a strong warrior and they couldn't take him out, so they offered him a surrender, and he showed up to surrender and to talk to him. And then they massacre him. They didn't give him his surrender and massacred his people. And so, if he's going to put a curse on things, yes, but I don't think he did it there. I mean, Point Pleasant was where he was camped, but that wasn't. If he did that, I don't think it was there. The story that comes from was actually a play in the late 70s, where a high school did a play about the Point Pleasant being cursed and the bridge collapsing because Cornstalk put the curse there. So I don't think that had anything to do with it until later. I think a playwright did that. But that said, Cornstalk did curse the land near Popelick, near Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
But there is a bridge there that has a monster that actually has a body count. The Popelick monster has several people have died investigating him. But that has more to do with the fact that it's on a train trestle bridge and the trains have killed a couple people.
Okay, but as far as Indian curses goes, the show The Poltergeist was based on a house that was built on a graveyard. So as far as the Cornstalk, which I think he's got a brother named Corn Pop, I understand, but those legends of Indians, they seem to have some connection to curses and some power. Would you not agree with that?
Oh, no, I totally agree with that. There's definitely a lot of strange, unusual, and dark curses with some of these native tribes. I'm good friends with Al Goingback, who's a Seminole medicine man and a great author. If you ever want to read some spooky books, pick up Al Goingback.
Okay.
His book Crota is probably one of the best monster books I've ever read. But anyway, he's my go-to. Whenever I get a native legend, I'm like, Owl, is this real? And he'll go, oh yeah, that's real, or that's Creek, that's Lakota, whatever. But then sometimes he'll be like, no, that's somebody made that up. But that's what we've got to have our experts. But even he jokes all the time that it's like Florida was built on a native burial ground, because it all was. And that's and same with all of Appalachia. There were tons of tribes up there. And they all have their own. You don't call it folklore. You don't call it mythology, because to them that's just their life. It's this spirituality is part of everyday existence. So talking to the old man of the woods, which to us would be Bigfoot, that's just something they did. And talking to the Crow attacked a tribe called the Moon-Eyed people. They were little people with big eyes. And it's when you read that now with a Westerner's eyes, I look at that and I go, oh wait, they attacked fairies, and in the mountains of Appalachia, which would have been the Irish mountains further up, So
now, how about this question? This is from moderator Jade. Is it true there is a Cherokee death cat in the Appalachia? How about that?
Yeah, there's a couple of those. It's often called the Wampus Cat, which goes to a legend where a young squaw in her tribe was wondering why her husband was out at night and thought he might be cheating on her. Oh. So she followed him to another tent, but he was actually learning medicine from the great shaman of their tribe. So when she was caught, she was cursed to be transformed into this almost what we would now call skinwalker, but that's more Navajo, much further west. Over here they they made her into a cat woman, basically, and a werewolf, but a cat, a big panther or a puma, or something like that. And so this, a bobcat, and with great claws and great talons, and they are seen all up and down the Appalachians, all the way from Alabama, all the way up to, New York. Some of the tribes have encounters with them, and a lot of the early settlers talk about, oh, there was a wampus cat in them hills, and there's actually a newspaper article where a posse was organized to try to chase one in Tennessee because it had been raiding the livestock, and they were convinced it wasn't a bobcat, it wasn't a panther, it was a wampus cat.
Ooh,
And
like it.
so the Cherokee death cat is just a variant of that story.
Well, I'm all for the death cat. Interestingly enough, I think our moderator has some cats there. So so we have a late poll on our website for those watching the broadcast with Mark Muncy, and the poll is right underneath the chat. It says, if you needed one monster weapon, which would you choose? The options there are a cross. Now, you needed one monster weapon to say go out in the forest, right? A cross, holy water, silver bullet, salt, a hatchet, AR-15, or a grenade. Now, I'm thinking a grenade myself. So people watching the chat, you can either put that you can write it in the live chat, or you can take the poll. You may have to refresh your page to do it. And then you can come right back to the live stream going on now. But so your choices are, if you only had one monster weapon, would it be a cross, holy water, silver bullet, salt, hatchet, AR-15, or a grenade? By the way, Mark, when I went to a haunted house, people were complaining about they were being harassed. I guess it would be a poltergeist. I brought a cross and some holy water and some sage, and I think it was fairly effective.
It's these things, like I said, we don't know the rules they follow. So at some point, we hopefully will. Edison, Tesla, all these guys were trying to invent devices to talk to the dead. They thought they were hearing things on the lines when they're the only three people in the world with phones at that point, and they're picking up strange voices, so they were trying to invent this stuff. And it just fell out of favor. The science went a different direction. Spiritualism was part of was a movement of science initially, in the late 1800s, Victorian spiritualism scientists were backing this stuff. So I think, as for, what gets rid of a ghost, we don't know. So, is it putting them to rest? Are we actually sending them to a better place when we do that? That's why a lot of haunted houses, a lot of haunted locations do not want exorcisms, do not want things, because they've got a little kid ghost. They play with them. They give them toys and stuff like that. Are you sending them to someplace better? Mm-hmm. We don't know.
Well, so you said that you and your wife have been to a lot of haunted places. Have you guys ever brought anything back?
I don't think we've really brought anything back. We've had some unusual activity here in the house, but I've had that long before I started doing any of this stuff. So I think that was one of the things that drew me to this, because this stuff goes back to my childhood. I've always seen unusual things that didn't make sense to me. That kind of runs in my family. I have one side of my family all talk about it. The other side of my family, you guys are crazy. We don't talk about that. What's wrong with you? So, but my grandmother talked about it a ton. She used to talk about the kid who lived in my closet, and I was like, whoa. What? And she's like, the one who the one who died there. He talks to he wants to talk to you. I'm like, oh, that's lovely. And there's something to tell your 9-year-old grandson. Yeah, exactly. So I guess it's just one of those things. I've always been intrigued by it. But I want to know the science behind it too. I think there is a way to blend the two. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it's going to be, and I know that upsets a lot of the paranormal investigators. Are like, nope, this is science. And a lot of the Bigfoot hunters, it's a gorilla out there in the woods. It's an unknown ape. Mm-hmm. But then why do the footprints stop? Why do some of these things don't make sense? Why do people have weird headaches and stuff around them? And then and the more and more of these weird cryptids, especially things like Mothman, that tend to lean a little more supernatural. But then you got things like Flatwoods monster, which looks like an alien encounter, smells like an alien encounter, acts like an alien encounter, but It, it's written off the pages of history as a hoax.
Hmm.
These things. Again, I like to think we are still in the early days. I think
Hmm.
at some point we're getting closer to actual answers, and
Hmm.
now it's not so taboo. The
Uh,
problem is it's still entertainment
so
mostly.
so
It's
so
still
so
get ratings.
in your book list there, what's the difference between creepy Florida and eerie Florida?
Okay, Erie was our first book, 2015. That was our History Press had reached out to me. I'd run a haunted house for 20 years and collected all these local stories, and I based our haunted house on all these local legends. So Erie was our first book, and that was all the major ones: Robert the Doll, Skunk Ape, the Gulf Breeze UFOs, Pinky the Sea Monster. But we threw in a few obscure ones. Um, yeah, again, Florida loves to rename things. That's why it's Pinky instead of the Beast of St. John's or something.
Hmm.
But we threw in a few obscure ones, and when that became a hit and people started reaching out about the obscure ones, we got to do our follow-up book, Freaky Florida, which was
Hmm.
deeper dives, off the beaten path stuff, more obscure monsters and cryptids, but also stuff we were able to debunk, but was still cool historically,
Hmm.
and just some really nifty stuff. And then when that became a bestseller, they said, "Hey, we need a ghost book." So that's when Creepy Florida came out, which was all ghosts. It's all paranormal locations. And every one of them's done like a travel guide. So they start in the Panhandle, go across the top over to
Hmm.
Amelia Island, and then zigzag down to the Keys. So you can just follow the interstates and get off the little beaten paths where we tell you. We don't write about any place you are not allowed to visit. If it is private property, we tell you who to contact, and all
Hmm.
that. So none of the places in there, are, verboten.
Okay. Hey,
Um,
so by the way, we've got some responses in our live chat. We've got a vote
oh,
for AR-15. Somebody says just call out the name of Jesus. Another person says I want a Ghostbuster gun because they don't want to get slimed. And I think, of course, that everybody knows you just don't cross the streams. Okay, if you got a Ghostbuster,
exactly.
everybody knows that. Um, but here's another question: what about these orbs? We got orbs flying around everywhere.
Now, sadly, I'd say about 99.9% of the orbs I've seen are, camera things trying to catch bugs, trying to catch dust,
Hmm.
and it just comes across as an orb because it's a digital, error. That is a lot of them and the bulk of them. But is that like 0.5% that I can't explain, that nobody can explain, that they should be something else and they shouldn't be. And then, why is one camera, getting it constant and then not? And
Hmm.
then, it's another one of those things. We need to study it. We need the science behind it, to figure out why it works this way.
Now, when you've been out there, has any of your power equipment batteries were they drained?
Several places, notably the Devil's Tree down in Port St. Lucie, up in Appalachia. We had the same problem at the mushroom mines in Olive Hill, Kentucky, um, where just we had things fully charged and just died. We had one house we went to visit, and the guy was talking about he had a strange occurrence in his driveway. You want to talk about like weird portal type stuff? This guy had a newspaper laying out on his driveway, and as he was going out to get his newspaper, it sank into the driveway, like it melted, and then it came up in pieces and looked
Wow.
like, he said, it looked like something like taco chips in a dip, was the pieces of newspaper melted into his driveway. Now this was in winter in Tennessee, and when we were there, he was showing us this warped spot in his driveway. We got EMF readings. We got a lot of weird things. And then suddenly everything went dead. The camera, everything, and our car wouldn't start.
Wow.
And we had to go jump start it from we couldn't even use another car to jump start it because the other car had died.
Hmm.
So is it science? It could be, electromagnetism. There could be something under the ground. It was weird. Again, one of those things. What the heck is it? What does it make sense? Later that day, he talked about seeing some strange character walk by his yard with noodly arms and just walking by, and then went behind a tree as a car was coming by.
Hmm.
and then he realized it just vanished.
Mm.
He's like, where did it go?
Well,
what was it? And this is all, and that's the kind of thing. What is that? What does that make?
Well,
Mark, does that make any sense?
Well, Mark,
no.
you being the monster connoisseur, then you have to get this question here. What's your best guess of that monster underneath the bed?
The monster underneath the bed.
We know there's one there. Guess, everybody knows there's one there. You just never.
Oh yeah, there is.
You never put your arm down. Everybody knows that. You just don't. Okay.
Yep. If you got a toe loose, it's gonna get it.
Right.
It's I've heard of the tally-poo, which is a common creature in the Appalachians. Yeah, the tally-poo. If you leave your covers up, the tally-poo will get you. If you go out at night, the tally-poo will get you. And you'll feel its finger tapping at your window, and if you look out the window, it'll get you. It's all about if you don't see it, it can't see you. So if you don't look out, you're safe. So if you're under the covers, you're safe.
Everybody knows that the covers it has some kind of supernatural protection. Your cover does.
But again, I think that goes back to the Fae, where if you don't introduce yourself, if you don't give them your name, if you don't give them that, it can't connect. And I think this is the same thing. You're not making connection with these creatures. You're not seeing them. You're hearing them, and they're trying to entice you. But if you don't fall for it, you're gold.
And I don't think a silk sheet gives you enough protection. Actually,
no, it's got to be a weighted blanket. Got to be a weighted blanket.
It has to be.
Something that your mama sewed for you with love. That's the real power.
Because everybody knows they like to pull it off of you, and those silk ones slide real easy. So the other one's a little bit more grippy. You got a lot more protection. All right.
And if you got one that the Amish made, it's usually pretty good too. So.
By the way, if anybody watching the program in the live chat, if you have a special protection that you have for the thing underneath your bed, or it's in the closet just right next to you, if you have take special precautions, let us know what it is. We obviously agree on the supernatural protection of the blanket there. All right, Old Army Grit, he's back. He says, "Are chupacabras real or a myth?"
It depends on who you ask. Honestly,
they've caught them though.
Yeah, they've caught things that they don't know what they are exactly. And like with all these things, a lot of these things, they capture them, they send them places, and then they're never seen again. We don't get the results. We don't know what happens. A lot of these unusual cases seem to disappear. It's like those, the giant bones that people found all over the Appalachians. It was all over the news in the 30s. People found giant skeletons, 12 feet tall, 10 feet tall, and now where are they?
Right.
You can't find them anywhere. They were transported to the Smithsonian. Smithsonian doesn't have any records of them. Well, did they get them? We don't know.
They got secret chambers. Everybody knows that.
Exactly. Everybody knows that. That's where you find the real stuff.
You ever been to Skinwalker Ranch?
I have been, yes, but it has been some time. I know they just did a big event out there last weekend, actually, where they invited people to come out, and I guess it's going to be an annual thing now. So this was their second one, and they've already scheduled the third one for next year. So if you ever want to go visit, that is a cool place. I'll admit there were some weird things out there. But I went a long time ago. That was 10 plus years ago, before it was super famous.
They were the ones that had an event, several events where the eyewitnesses saw a portal open and a Bigfoot come out. And you started mentioning it earlier in the first hour about the Bigfoot footprints stopping. And we all know what that is. They're going into another dimension, and they may have somebody they snatched from the forest, and that's why they're never found.
Yep. And a lot of people think, oh, that's that can't be real. That's crazy. That's weird. And again, a long time, not too long ago, the ghost people wouldn't talk to the Bigfoot people. Bigfoot people wouldn't talk to the UFO people, and none of them were talking to each other. That still happens. A lot of, especially the older school investigators, won't, if you're on the stage with somebody who's been hunting Bigfoot since the 70s, he doesn't want to hear about that unusual stuff. It's to him, it's something he saw, flesh and blood. Yes. Some of these ghosts people see are flesh and blood. They look real. They don't look Ghostbusters has keyed us to looking like a certain thing, Close Encounters has us looking like certain things. We're realizing now that, and again, science, the Hadron Collider has caused, who knows what, we're starting to see pieces of science that we could only dream of years ago, and it's starting to become more believable and legitimate.
Yeah.
And so I think we're on the cusp. I would love to see us go over that in my lifetime.
You seem fairly
we are.
You seem fairly excited about it too. By the way, somebody in the live chat said I must have my feet covered, and we did discuss that, Mark. That you can't even leave a toe out. If you leave a toe out of that, if you leave a toe out, you're asking for trouble. Big trouble.
Yep, and they'll blame it on diabetes or frostbite or something. But that was why you kept your toes under the covers, was to avoid the tally poo or avoid the monster.
So now,
the monster under the bed.
So now there's a thing called fairies. People want to know, are fairies good or bad? Now it seems that when you talk about a fairy, you got your tooth fairy, you got your San Francisco fairies, whatever. I mean, but generally they're depicted as kind of helpful creatures, but are they always are they helpful or are they tricksters?
It's a bit of both. It depends on which versions you're talking to, and they seem to there's factions. They seem to be there was a group down here in Florida that attacked a farm in the 40s. There was a guy, they caught this guy on an orange grove that they thought was stealing oranges. And he was about 6 inches tall and hairy and naked and speaking a language they couldn't understand. So they called the police.
Naked.
And the police thought he was like a circus performer or something loose in the woods, because you remember this is early days. Ringling was down here and all that. Tom Thumb was at Ripley's over in St. Augustine. So this was all not completely out of the ordinary. But when they grabbed him, they couldn't put him in handcuffs because he's so tiny. They put him in an orange crate and start taking him to the police station. When they do, suddenly the farm is attacked by rocks and sticks, and there's dozens of the little guys throwing rocks and sticks at him. So the police let the little guy loose, and it solves the problem. But they find that one of their farmhands says, "Oh, he offended the Red Hats," which is, I guess, a British form of fairy. And so he sent to Ireland for a special blessed rock to protect their farm. And they got it. And it's still there. The rock is still there, and their farm doesn't have any problems with fairies anymore. But these sort of things have gone on. And the Appalachians, you go into these hollers, and some of these hollers have a family haint or a family spirit.
So a special. What did this rock do?
It protected the land. It was blessed blessed by a bishop, and that protected the farm.
Did it protect it against fairies or gargoyles or what?
For supposedly protected them from evil spirits, and would appease the fairies so that the land would be safe.
All right. So if I get one of these special fairy rocks and send it to Pete Buttigieg's office in D.C., then he won't bother nobody again, will he?
That sounds like a plan.
All right. So what is the most unsettling story or legend that even shocked Mark Muncy? Even Mark Muncy couldn't believe it. And Mark Muncy's heard everything. He's researched this stuff. He came across this story. Bam. Hit you. What was it?
This was one I had heard of. It's in St. Petersburg, Florida. And it's the legend called Mini Lights. And it depended on where you heard the story. Like if you heard it from the north side of St. Petersburg, it was, if you say mini lights 3 times, these green little lights will chase you. Okay? That sounds not too scary. But on the south side of town, I would ask people, what do you know about mini lights? And they would go, don't go messing with mini lights, man. Don't talk about mini lights. Mini lights, they'll get you. You say mini lights, it's a gator man who lives in the sewer who will steal your children if you go looking for mini lights. Wow, big difference, right? So then I start investigating further, and another guy goes, "Oh, they got it all wrong. Her name is Minnie Lightning, and she is the voodoo queen of St. Petersburg. And her gator boys, her little gator men, will come and steal your children if they're out at night." Okay, and she is the reason we have so much lightning in Tampa Bay. It's the reason our hockey team's the Lightning, is because we're the lightning capital of the world, and that's Minnie Lightning. And she hates Marie Laveau, so she sends all the hurricanes from Tampa over to New Orleans. So, all right, so that kind of makes sense too. But I'm like, okay, this is such a crazy story. What the heck is it? Where's the real history? And I start digging, and I was looking for something completely different at a history museum. And out of this archive, a thing fell out of a book right into my lap, literally, and it solved mini lightning. And you want to talk about scary? The truth is so much scarier than any of those legends. The truth was, it was a fan that fell into my lap. It was a hand fan that you would cool yourself off with while you're standing at a roadside attraction. The roadside attraction was an alligator farm here in St. Petersburg. And on the fan was two African American children that were gator bait. And what it was is the gator farm was kidnapping children and throwing them into the pit to be entertain tourists to get chased by alligators.
Wow.
So the legend really is, beware of the men with lights. The gator boys will steal your children. So they would go out at night with lights, look for children out, and steal them for the alligator farm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the story that scared the bejesus out of me, because that was 1938, not that long ago.
Well, they're not stealing the children. The teachers' unions are. All right. Hey, so
exactly.
let me ask you this question here. Somebody I saw come up in the live chat question thing. It said, what about shapeshifters? And then I remembered seeing this, and Mark, if I didn't know better, I would say that you are shapeshifting with your eyes there. What's going on?
But like I said, I started as a haunted house owner. So for a long time, when I would start doing these events and stuff, I would wear my contacts that I used to wear at the haunted house, which are these whiteout eyes. And I was the caretaker of Hillview Cemetery, which was our haunted attraction based on the Lost Cemetery of Hillview here in Tampa Bay.
So you're not shape shifting.
No, that's makeup. That's
don't just say yard that way. We have some.
I'll hold a piece of iron to prove that I am not a fae. There you go.
I tell you what, though, we are talking about creatures, and somebody read my mind. Doug in Virginia read my mind. Have you came across any chuds?
No, I love the movie, but
only a few of us know about that movie. I think Jade in the live chat, you know about it. Anybody ever watched the Chud movie? Just say yes in the live chat.
That's a classic.
But
now,
they're out there.
In Huntington, West Virginia, there is a creature there called the Bogeyman that was in a mine just outside of Huntington, the Rose Run Iron Mine. And this is an 1800s incident where they busted through a wall looking for a new vein, and they found a cave system. And in that cave system, they found a dead bear, and it was being eaten by two creatures that looked like cavemen. You know, they were scraggly. I would call them like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, the way they were described in these letters. Nasty. And this is like a family letter to, from one brother to another saying, hey, hope to see you at the wedding. By the way, this weird thing happened in the mine where we saw these weird creatures that were eating a bear. What should we do? And then the brother wrote something back. And then I got the next letter, which is the one writing back saying, well, the mine owners hired some gunmen who came in and killed the bears and the creatures. And we saw them bring them out. So, a cannibalistic, well, they ate bears, so they probably would eat people, but they did live in the underground. They had big, crazy eyes, the way he described them.
But isn't there stories of LA, the catacombs underneath LA that somebody called the ant people used to live there?
Most major cities have some sort of creature living in their sewer system.
New Orleans
Atlanta supposedly has some.
New Orleans certainly's got some things living underneath.
New Orleans has got to. But,
I mean, there's voodoo on every corner. They're calling up demons all. That's why I don't ever want to go down there, because they're calling up demons everywhere. They celebrate the dead. Somebody's possessed over there, and I don't want to know anything about
Savannah, it's a cottage industry. All the ghost tours there. So Savannah and St. Augustine, you can go there and take more ghost tours than you can find people. So, yeah.
Well, somebody's asking a question. I think we've kind of discussed it. They want to know what's happened to the missing people who visit national parks. We were talking about David Pelias and Missing 411. And his theorem is that there are certain parameters that occur when people disappear. There's a boulder or rock formation. There's a weather event. There's a point of separation. And, you know, and interestingly enough, a person's life can be a lot more exciting if they were aware of the sort of the footprint or indicators that there's supernatural events happening. For instance, I mentioned that we've seen stacks of rocks in the forest. That was actually in that movie I mentioned earlier, Big Legend on Amazon Prime. Yeah. The guy there finds a stack of rocks there, and so and then sometimes you'll find rocks in a circle. That's usually a witch's covens out there doing voodoo and stuff. But there are indicators, and in fact, there's even some earlier legends where you can find specific trees that the Indians bent to direct where to go and to mark their territory, and you can still find those trees today. Those are exciting. There's a lot of exciting things out there that one can, if they're just aware of it, what to look for.
If you look at all the maps of all the missing people, and you look at all the maps of national parks, and you look at all the maps of cave systems, and you look at all the maps of UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, ghost hotspots, all these flaps, they overlap a lot. And you start looking at that, and that's what John Keel called the vortexes. These were vortexes. These were paranormal hotspots. Bermuda Triangle type things. The Salisbury Plain up in England, and but Appalachia, right at the heart of Appalachia's got all that. And Serpent Mound and Alligator Mound and all these Native American signs, warning signs saying, "Hey, this is a weird place. Be careful." And it's we just came in, bulldozed it, built condos. So and put up some White Castles and some and some checkers. So,
oh, wait a minute. Are you talking about? Are you, so you know about White Castles?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I like I said, I travel every place in my book. So
I thought they were kind of. I thought they were just kind of local. Are they all over?
They're all over the north. They start in Kentucky and go north. But south we've got Crystals.
So we asked earlier if anybody knew what. I was testing their monster knowledge. Did they know what a chud was? The other one would be, would they know what a slider is? Because you can't have one without the other, Mark. That's just all there is to it.
True. There's nothing better on a long day.
And then so what do we got with the Hat Man and the Shadow Man? I mean, a Slender Man. What is? There's a whole bunch of mans out there.
Yeah, it's like ladies in white and like kid ghosts and and haunted dolls. They're another genre. They're another classification. They're a thing we don't understand. The shadow people, the man in the hat, those are common sightings. I get dozens of emails about those every month. Hey, I saw this in my room. I saw this down the street. I had this strange this strange occurrence. One of my favorite letters was I got one from a guy who said he woke up and there was one in his room, and it literally walked him to a closet that wasn't in his room, and in his closet was a suit for him to put on. And he put on the suit, and then he leads him out of his apartment, leads him to another apartment a few doors down in another building, and goes up to another floor, goes to this door and opens the door, and his lady's there in a bathrobe. And he and this shadow figure tell the lady in the bathroom, "Yeah, we know you saw something strange yesterday. You're not allowed to talk about it. Don't tell anybody." And she was like in a trance, and she said, "Okay." And then the guy walked him back to his apartment, and he laid back down in bed. And when he woke up, closet's gone, everything else is gone. He's like, "What the hell, happened?" And so he went the 2 doors down and the upstairs and went to the lady's apartment. There's a lady who lives there. And she's like, "What the hell are you talking about? Get out of my house. Get out of my apartment. I don't know." So what was that? It's another one of those weird, doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Did he have an experience? Something weird happened that we can't explain. So, do we call that the Hat Man? Do we call that a Men in Black experience? We don't know. It's unclassifiable.
I know they never wear white hats, though.
No,
you're safe. So what's up with that? What have you learned about the Moon-Eyed people?
The Moon-Eyed people, I think, are it's pretty much Cherokee, and some of the Choctaw tribe talked about them. So this is a multi-tribe thing of short people that the Cherokee decided to massacre because they were messing with them. They were stealing their horses. They were stealing their, they were stealing their livestock. So the Cherokee declared war on them and massacred them to a man.
Mm-hmm.
But the descriptions of them were big-eyed, big-headed, possibly some people say look like gray aliens. Some people say were fae. It just depends on the version of the stories you read.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the Cherokee consider this one of their greatest wars. One of their greatest battles was vanquishing them because they'd been such a bane in their side. And of course, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just folklore. It's just a tale, but not to the Cherokee. This is something, and this was in the foothills of the Appalachians, right around near Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. So you can go to Dollywood and think about the Moon-Eyed people. So.
Yeah, that's I remember the description of Gatlinburg and Dollywood and a couple other towns around there, and it was once described as a bathtub ring of cities around the Smoky Mountains. And that's really, if you think about it, that's what it is. It's a bathtub ring. It's nasty, and if you ever go there, you got to go through the Gatlinburg bypass. But other than that, it's just shops and Chinese goods.
I like some of the cheesy stuff. I like the Gatlinburg Mysterious Mansion, and in Pigeon Forge has one of my favorite museums. It has the Alcatraz East, which used to be the crime museum of Washington D.C. They moved it to Pigeon Forge, and if you want true crime stuff, man, you cannot find more true crime artifacts than in that museum. They've got Ted Bundy's car. They've got the Bronco from O.J. Simpson. So you're all into roadside attractions. I'm all the opposite of that. I run away from roadside attractions. I like to travel the road less traveled, and I think that's where I like both.
Well, you can have both, Mark. You can have both. I will allow that at least for this continuance of the interview. But now we got something called the black-eyed children. Nobody likes them either.
No, they are definitely a newer phenomena, but if you look back, again, there's Native American history for them too. It's one of those, they seem to pop up every couple hundred years. They are strange kids with strange, black colored eyes, and they have unusual powers. You talk about you're sending them to the cornfield and, Charlie X, don't be here, blinking you out of existence. These kids are, terrifying to the people who see them. But it seems to be more a recent internet find of an old legend that is just resurfacing, because every time somebody writes to me about it, it's asking me if we've heard somebody has seen one. Nobody is sending me any reports of actually seeing them. So it's one of those, hey, I want to know. My friend says he saw one, but it's never I saw one. It's I'm waiting for, information on that. So that's one of those ones. Verdict's out because I haven't had an actual witness encounter yet. So.
And we've got a couple questions related. What are aliens and what are crop circles?
Okay. Aliens, again, I don't know what to tell you on that. It's one of those, I go with UFO experts. I go with alien hunters. Some of these encounters to this day amaze me. The descriptions these people saw, like I said, mentioned that Crestview sighting earlier. These guys are in their 70s and 80s, and they're telling me about this strange incident at their school from their childhood that has marked them so much that they remember it. I have trouble remembering what I ate yesterday, let alone what I saw 30 years ago, or 40 years ago. Or in this case, almost 60 years ago. And these guys, describe this strange craft with a turret and then all these other little things. The Flatwoods monster is probably one of my favorite cases of all time where, because it ties into several different encounters. There was a UFO flap in Washington, D.C., literally the week before the Flatwoods incident, where UFOs are seen over Washington, D.C. Everybody's like, well, I don't believe in aliens till they're seen in Washington, D.C. These were seen in Washington, D.C. in 1952. They had newspapers and all over the place. And then in Tampa, down here in Florida, some planes are scrambled because something unusual flew over them. And they were trying to figure out what it was. This is 1952. It could be still, it's no longer World War II, but we're worried about the Russians. So, so we send the plane up, it crashes. The plane crashes in a training accident, but we know it was scrambled.
The old training
accident. It was scrambled, but their flight is redacted. You cannot read, the report of this flight. But later that day, West Virginia, just a couple hours away, in a couple hours' time, some kids are out playing baseball, and they see something crash into the mountain behind them. And it was like a fireball. They thought it was a meteor. So they go up to investigate. They get their mom. They get some more kids. This one guy's a National Guard, is leading them. He's an off-duty National Guard. Mm-hmm. They get up to the top of the hill, and there is this crashed sphere. And next to it, comes out of the woods next to him, is 12-foot tall, glowing eyes. It looks like a reptilian thing looking through portholes at them. Smoke, and it's burning their eyes. They don't know what to do. They run, and they try to go get help. The government shows up. Oh, there's nothing here. Everything's gone. They see tire tread marks where something was dragged away. But no, nothing. And the reason the government's in the area is they're looking for a crashed plane that wasn't reported. So
let me ask you.
Cover.
So here's a question that because my YouTube channel was deleted, but I can ask this question now here on Rumble, that somebody sent in, and the question is, do you think the black-eyed babies or the black-eyed kids were the babies of parents who got the jab?
I don't know about that. But okay. That could be the new rush, because that's the when they first appeared was right after the polio vaccine.
Well, it's a valid question in my mind. I mean,
before that it was the smallpox vaccine.
Okay, so Mark, I've done interviews since 2003, right after Art Bell went off the air, thousands, and in fact I don't even know about this. May be one of the longest running shows ever. 2003. That's I can't do the math, but was that not 19 years?
Because we ran our haunted house from 96.
I can't think of anybody.
2014, and that was only 19 years.
So I can't think of any of the shows been doing it that long. But in that time, on all the alien shows that we have, and if you went down our guest list, you would see there's not one subject covered on this show. We cover them all. Give everybody a fair chance to tell their story, even if people don't want to hear them or don't like them or totally disagree. We feel like, hey, just give them a chance, maybe get a nugget of truth. And here's something I learned too, just as a host. Everybody has a nugget of truth, no matter what the subject is that we talk about. And my job is, and I tried to get that one little nugget of truth. Like I've been trying all night to get a nugget of truth out of you. We probably got 2 or 3 out of you. Okay. And we don't even know it. But of all those interviews on the alien topic, there's only one that's seen an alien. And I know her personally. Her name is Chase Klosky. And of all the other alien people that said, well, I know somebody saw something. Here's a story that I read, here's Project Blue Book, here Blue Beam, and I mean, there's like secondhand references. Here's an internet story of, here's this and that. All those, only one, and she was doing a farmer called her. She had a team and said, well, I've got UFOs buzzing in my farm, and I think it was in Kentucky. And she went down there, and we mentioned the draining of the batteries. Well, here's the thing. The UFO did appear when they were there. They were in the field. They were there and there was she had like 3 people with her plus the farmer, and the ship it appeared right above them. And then they had this panic flight or fight type of thing that you happens to you, just the sheer terror of it. Cause you really don't really kind of expect it. You kind of expect like a blurry UFO. Is that a planet or is that a UFO? It's moving. It could be a satellite, that kind of thing. You don't expect to have a craft hovering above you. Nobody expects that. And she said that the farmer got his flashlight and was looking across the field, and it went right to a 5-foot gray alien, and they all saw it. And it was standing there in the field with the big classic eyes. He said it didn't flinch at all. And they were so scared that they ran, got in their truck, and they're doing this thing that you see in that movie, Fire in the Sky. The Travis Walton story, how they're flying down. They were doing that. They gassed and they were going up and down to get out of this field. And they said, fortunately, everyone had their cameras rolling because there were several cameras that they had. And
Nice.
all of them, the batteries went dead, or the film, there was nothing on the film. All of them.
Yep.
But that was the only case of all of them where an actual alien was seen standing right in front of somebody.
And I got the only one that really gave me goosebumps when I talked to a guy was he was a sailor out in the Gulf, and he was up near Pensacola, up in the Gulf Breeze area, where the sightings occurred in the 80s. But he was talking. This was 2015, and he was out on his boat, and his depth finder went from 400 feet deep to 40 feet deep, and alarms start going off. And so he rushes to the deck. He was down under the deck because it was late. And he's thinking a whale is coming up under him or something, something weird's going on. And he sees this dark shape under his boat. And then it comes out of the water without making a sound and hovers over his boat. And it's huge. And he says like 100 feet, and he's taking pictures on his phone, but it's black on a black sky, and there's nothing. He's getting nothing, and then his phone dies, everything dies, and then it just takes off instantly. So something underwater comes above, black triangle type shape, huge, makes no noise. The hairs on his arm, as he's telling me this, are standing on end because it has shaken him to his core. And of course, I asked him, so were you drinking that night? He's like, of course, I was on my boat. Of course I was drinking. And I was like, did you take pictures? He's like, yes, it's black on black. He shows me his phone. It's just this big black picture. And I'd always tell people, try to take a picture of your nightstand next to you when you wake up in the morning without a flash and see what that's 2 feet away from you with your fancy phone. Look what it comes out like. It's just going to be black. And so did he see something? Yeah, he saw something we don't understand. Did your guys see aliens? Who knows? We don't know what they saw. They saw something that does not make sense. Was it an alien? Was it an extra dimensional being? Was it some just mass hallucination? We don't know. They don't understand it. We don't understand it. Unless we can go back there and recreate it, we can't. But that's why we need scientific study. We need.
But
you need to report it.
There is something going on in this country right now. It's called mass formation hypnosis. The half the country is being hypnotized, and so there is such a thing. Interestingly enough, talking to you, and of course you have your books there, and the guests I've talked to, and really the movies I've seen. People can pick up tips about the thing, about to be more observant of what's going on around. And then you say, well, I never see nothing. Well, you've never really, a person like that would probably never actually look for it or be aware of it. For instance, they may walk past a pile of rocks and say, oh, some kid was here, but you don't understand it. It's 10 miles deep in the forest, and it's not like a little kid's out here.
Was out here.
Or how to maybe do a stick hit against a tree. And another thing I just learned recently was when I mentioned that movie Big Legend on Prime. It's something I never thought about. Which when the guy is, he's looking at his camera and he's looking, oh, here's my wife and, my wife to be, and he's looking, he's smiling. Then all of a sudden he got this puzzled look on his face. It's just a shot of the forest, but in the background, there's a figure. And so I learned myself when I was going through my video of our hiking trip that I'm not just looking at the figures, human people or whatever. I'm starting to look in the background, and the people who have been out in the forest, you might want to look at your pictures. Don't look at your subject, the elk you were looking for, or, the bear that you took, or the great flower that you took. There could be something in your background. You wouldn't even know it. So you can learn these little techniques, and you may have already seen something you weren't aware of it.
And you don't know. And then the big thing with me is make sure if you do see something, say something. If you have a story that your grandpa told you of something that happened to him in the 1940s, please share it with something, because it might corroborate another story from somebody else's grandpa that they thought was insane. If you saw a ghost somewhere, let the people in that building know, but also report it to your local ghost teams. There are all over. All you got to do is Google ghosts in my area, and there's got to be some reporting service near you. The Bigfoot BFRO, the Bigfoot Research Organization, MUFON for UFOs. There are tons of organizations that would love to have your stuff. Authors like myself, we love to have your emails because we can sort it to the places that need it, and that way we can make these databases and we can corroborate these things. So they're not just some goofy ghost story or some goofy monster. This is, oh, wait, there's a pattern here. This goes back thousands of years. What is this? Mm-hmm. Is this a ghost of a caveman? Is the Thunderbird, a pterodactyl or a ghost of something? Are there opens? Is things quantum entangled and we're getting stuff from the past and the future? We don't know. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of stuff, if we can just document it, get it out there, that's where we find this stuff and we can study it. And that's what it's all about.
In your research, did you ever talk to Native American Indians about the blue Kachina star?
I have not heard of that. So that one slipped past me. If anybody has some information on that, please drop me a line.
Okay. So I think I've always kind of refrained from making declarative statements, I was kind of doing the host thing to kind of, maybe whatnot. But I think there's some things that I'm prepared to make a declarative statement on. For instance, ghosts are real. So let's just say that now, and let's just say that even science said is real. What difference would that make? What does that tell us about our existence?
I think that tells, again, we got to find out what they are. Is this really the soul, or is this just some psychic imprint from our brain that imprinted on the stone? Is this, are these the ones that talk to us? Are they just more energy, matter, energy, these things are transferable. So is this something that, we could reconstitute? That's what this is. Again,
those are the general questions that have been asked and continue to be asked. But let's just say we're past that. It's kind of like UFOs. UFOs are real. Okay. They're out there. I mean, now the Navy's showing the TikTok videos. I mean, so it's pretty much there. So, I mean, what's the next step? So I'm just using ghosts. We could say goblins, fairies, hat man, dog man, an infinite amount of these things. But if you make a declarative statement and say, this is real, what does that mean about our existence? Doesn't it mean, and maybe I'll try to give you a little bit of headway on that, doesn't it mean that there are we live in multiple dimensions?
Exactly.
That if there's ghosts, then there's something else. There are other things that inhabit that dimension. And does that mean? Go ahead.
One of these things there's a domino that's gonna fall, and it's gonna trigger all this, and we're gonna have to look at things. Once one of these is, that's why the coelacanth was such a big thing, and one of my favorite cryptids that became real. They caught one. It's real. It's a misplaced creature from time that's still out there. We're just now learning about giant squids in the Gulf, just not too far from my house. These were krakens. These were legendary beasts. Oh, guess what? They're real. We found them now. They're there. We know they're there. So what else is next? What's the next thing we're going to find? I think ghosts are on that precipice. I think we are going to find them. But what are they? We don't. That's what I want to find out. And that's when we start talking to them. Let's see what they say. Let's actually get.
Would you say that ghosts is an indication of an eternal being?
I think it's
because you would think that a ghost couldn't die, right?
I think there's definitely something beyond us, and I think that's what it is. I think this is saying, hey, there's more to life than life. There is other things, and does this disprove other things? Does this disprove reincarnation? No, this means that might encourage reincarnation, that these things are, we're recycling, and this just one didn't quite make it into something. And for instance, that's what we've got to find. Okay. I think it's study. It's one of those, I can't wait to see what happens when people do start paying attention.
Well, it's kind of like, there's something out there, Mark, called the flagellum motor. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
The flagellum motor is a small bacteria. And the interesting thing about this, there's videos on it. It has a rotor, a stator, a drive shaft, and a tail. I mean, it's a motor. That's why they call it the flagellum motor.
Yeah.
But it's biological. And scientists have said that the flagellum motor is irreducible, which means that the rotor and the stator, I mean, if you know anything about cars or alternators or anything, a stator rotates and it generates electricity. I've seen it, and it looks exactly like that. You can see a drive shaft, a U joint. The tail goes 100,000 revolutions per minute. It instantly changes direction. But they say that it's of irreducible complexity. What that means is no part of that could have evolved. The stator could not have evolved and attached itself to the body, nor could the drive shaft. In other words, that flagellum motor had to be intelligently designed as a unit.
Yep.
Everything else you can make a composite. Let's just say, we've got the classic monkey to man. Okay, you're going down there and you got the monkey, but nobody sees what's before the monkey. I've never seen, where's the rest of the graph? Nobody's ever seen it, but you can see how they kind of put that together. They're showing complexity getting more complex, but that doesn't complex. In other words, because it's of a reducible complexity, you can make a definitive statement. It was designed and it appeared all in one as a unit, which tells you that there must be some intelligent being that designed that unit. So a definitive statement can be determined from the science of that flagellum motor. So if a ghost is out there, then it seems like it indicates that it can't die, and it goes through time, space, and dimension, which means there's an eternal existence beyond life.
Yep. And we start discussing, spiritualism as science again. We start talking, all right, well, did those people who said they had spirit guides, do they have spirit guides? Are these things real? I mean, dowsing rods do find water. Dowsing rods do find electrical currents and stuff. So, does that mean that every dowser is real? No, but that also doesn't mean that everyone's fake. And that's just it with these spiritualists and spiritualist camps all over the world. They talk to spirits, they talk to guides, they see things with the fortune cards, they see things with runes. Is that all fake? No. Some of that is, they hit the bullseye. So, that's with this stuff too. I think when we find ghosts, we find Bigfoot, we find these things and we discover they're, extra dimensional or normal or whatever, then suddenly it's like the mountain gorillas. We've got, Jane Goodall living with the ghosts. Somebody's going to go out there and start talking to them and figure it out.
We're getting near the end of the broadcast, but has any of these investigations, your cumulative knowledge base that you're developing, has any of that led you to believe or change your views of what happens when you die?
Yes. One of the ones that got me was there's a place in North Florida. It's called the Dozier School for Boys, and this is like one of the worst places. It was supposed to be where the worst kids were sent, and it was just terribleness, and it was basically 110 years of state-sponsored child abuse, and it was terrible. And all these things happened, but there was a church there, and there was ghosts in the church. You could hear the kids still singing because it was their one place of solace, their one place they could go hide. And we went there with a ghost hunting team to get the ghost stories. But the real history was so dark and so terrible that it was like, oh gosh, what do we do? How do we report this? But while we were there, we heard singing. We heard like a hymn being sung. And we're the only people there. There's nobody for miles, and in this old abandoned church, and the team was just floored. But nothing's on recording. Nothing was able to be picked up, but we all heard it. Auditory heard it, and you can hear us on the recording. What is that? Where's that coming from? But it's not on any of the EVPs, not any of the recordings. But when we walked into a room, I saw a little shadow of like a small face looking at me as it darted behind a door. And in that door, we found boxes of records from the school that were just loose, that anybody could find, and private information, all this stuff for students that were there. This is from 2008. The school closed in 2011. This was 2015 when we were there. And these records were just left there. And the only reason we went into that room, most people don't even go in it because it's a little storage closet, but was I saw the little kid dart into it. what did I see? And why was he showing me this? Well, we got the state to come take all that and take care of it, because that should have been locked up. It should have been protected property. Was the kid helping people? Was the kid a victim of Dozier? I don't know, but it shook me to my core. And that is, what did I see? I saw a kid. I did not see a ghost. I did not see a spectral entity. He was flesh. He was blood. He looked human to me. Did I see something out of time? Did I see a stone tape? Did I see, something? I don't know what I saw, and that's what I want to know. I want to know more. I want to believe. So yes, it changed me. There's things we can do after death if we need to, and I don't know if that means, is there no heaven, no hell, whatever? I don't think that's the case. I think there's something. What it is, we don't know, and I hope someday we do.
So, and I can see it affected you because that's the most serious tone that you've taken all night, and so hopefully you'll continue that quest, at least in that vein, because certainly we all, the search for the meaning of life. I think everyone's really on it, and we're all searching for meaning, and really we kind of like to know some assurances about what happens when we die, and hopefully it's be a good thing, a transition to a good thing. But we'll find out who was right on that. Was it some of the more religious texts, or was it some of those that say we're going to be flying out and we'll all become one, and we'll all be humming in a vibration, going like that? I mean, if you make that claim, I don't think I would enjoy that one myself. Well, Mark Muncy, I appreciate you coming on the Edge broadcast. Where can people get your books?
Well, Daniel, they can find me at erieflorida.com. If you go there, you can order books direct from me and my missus, and she'll draw something in it and I'll sign it. But you can find my books just about anywhere. History Press publishes us, so they've got us in every Walgreens, CVS, and Cracker Barrel in Florida. But you can also find us up and down the interstates now with Erie, Appalachia. We'll be at the Mothman Festival next weekend in Point Pleasant. I'll be talking there about some holler monsters. And then we'll be at Cryptid Con in Lexington in November. So we do a lot of appearances. If you go to our website, Erie, Florida, or you can find my TV show, Erie Travels, which is a local show down here in Tampa Bay. But if you look up Erie Travels on YouTube, they rerun the episodes there, so you can watch me there. Second season starts in October.
All right. So. Well, Mark, I do believe, and one day you will believe as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure, Daniel. Anytime. Love to be back.
You bet. Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye. All right, everybody.